Well, welcome everyone to Two Qs with Lisa Ward. I am your host, and today our guest is Miss Jalessa. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Jalessa Slade. I'm president and CEO of Slade Consulting. So we work with nonprofits in the areas of grant writing, fund development, and then also capacity building. So like training for boards, staff members in grant writing. I worked in nonprofits for over a decade, small, medium size. I really enjoyed working in community impact. So getting out in the community, meeting community members, nonprofit organizations, helping them through their grant writing process. But Indiana, born and raised, I was born in Northwest Indiana, and then I attended the University of Evansville, so that was in Southern Indiana, and then stayed in Evansville for about a decade. And I recently moved to the Indianapolis area, so Central Indiana. So I often joke that at some point, perhaps Northeast Indiana will see me. But yeah, born and raised in the Midwest. And I really enjoy what I do, working with nonprofits, being able to be of service to multiple organizations, helping them fund their mission. It really is a passion for me. So any capacity that I can be in of service for organizations, I try to do that. I have a 4-year-old son named Sean. He will be turning 5 next month. And this year he has been obsessed with holidays. So every holiday that they talk about in school, he wants to decorate for that holiday. If there are costumes that are possible, he wants to get a costume. He was Cat in the Hat for Halloween.
Very
And
cute.
I had to stop him from wearing the costume like around the house, back to school. We went yesterday to pick up Christmas decorations, so I let him carry the basket and pick everything out. He has a smaller Christmas tree in his room. So it's been very sweet to see just from the innocence of a child being very excited about something for the first time. So yeah, I would say that I have hobbies, but my son is kind of my hobby.
Your
I've
hobbies are his hobbies.
Right. My hobbies are his hobbies and vice versa. I've started back to reading. I was a voracious reader growing up, and now I have the habit of, judging a book by its cover, getting it, starting to read, and then I'm like a quarter of the way through and I pick up a different book. So there are several books around the house that have bookmarks at various points that I'm trying to focus in on.
Nice. Same thing, but on Audible.
Oh, okay. I tried Audible, but I couldn't focus in. If I do other things, then I have to rewind and yeah.
Yeah, what did they say? Yes. Yeah. No, I have to be in the right headspace without
Yeah.
distractions to be able to listen intently. So,
Right.
yeah, cool. Well, that's all fantastic. And oh my gosh, yes. The just like immersing himself in all of the holidays and experiencing all of them, finally old enough to
Hmm.
possibly understand the purpose for the holiday or the magic behind a holiday.
Hmm.
So very, very fun. But getting back to you, ask the same two questions for everyone. So the first one is, what do you want that you don't already have?
And I did think about this question, and an answer popped out to me that I didn't quite expect because I am a confident person, but often in decision making, I am not confident. Like I don't have 100% confidence in my decision. And being a business owner, it has really brought that to the forefront because I think about all the different avenues that could happen depending on the decision that I make. And as you know, it's important to make a decision, stick to it, follow a plan. But I always have in the back of my mind, ooh, was that really the right decision? Thinking about like expanding or taking on new clients or new projects or bringing on someone else. I always have in the back of my mind, like, well, maybe I should wait, or oh, I made that decision too quickly, or I should have made that decision quicker. So I don't have that. I don't want to say ultimate confidence, but that more than 85% confidence when I'm making decisions. I'm constantly thinking about what could have happened if I made a different decision. Yeah.
Hmm. I think that alludes to why you do what you do.
Mhm.
You're you need a you for yourself, possibly. A
Yeah.
consultant
Oh.
like outside
Hmm.
looking at everything. You're trying to be yourself and the consultant possibly at the same time.
Right.
So
And
That's
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 funny.
interesting.
I didn't think about it that way because I do come in and when I talk to clients, it's okay, well, let's sit down and let's talk. Let's talk about, what's going well, what's not going so well, and what you want to improve. And I kind of being on the outside, I'm able to see the things that they don't see because they're doing it
Mhm.
on a day-to-day basis. So I'm able to consult with them on maybe they need a new fundraising plan. Maybe their staff just needs a little bit more training on what to look for when they're writing their narratives, and helping them make those decisions about like, okay, what avenues are we going to go toward when we're fundraising, making plans, bringing on new staff. But then for myself, I don't have that person saying, well, okay, this software would work best because X, Y, and Z. Of course, you
Mhm.
can take on 2 new clients this month for federal grants because of your calendar. I don't have someone doing that for me.
Mhm. Mhm. You might need to give yourself, I'm solving the problem for you here. Jumping ahead. Uh Giving yourself grace to have, it's like working on the business versus working in the business. So
Mm-hmm.
having space to step back and analyze yourself and how you're doing there. So I'm answering the next question for you. So what's holding you back from having that, I don't know, 95% confidence? I don't know that we'll all be like 100%.
Right.
We might be lying to ourselves if we're like, yeah, no, I'm 110. Like, there's always that little voice in our heads. So what's
I
holding you back from
I
achieving
think
that?
it's having worked as an employee in nonprofits, but then also on the outside as a consultant, working with so many different organizations with different missions, seeing decisions that have been made either from leadership such as the board or leadership as far as the executive director or the president and CEO. And then seeing like, okay, they made this decision, didn't quite go the way they wanted to, and now they're bringing me in. Or they didn't want to make a decision and so
Mhm.
they've gone down this path and now we need to right the ship. But then also just, being a business owner, making decisions and they don't go exactly the way that I planned. So having to, reel back, perhaps I, expanded a little bit too far. Now I have to reel back in, or just in the services that I provide, saying, okay, I'll provide these 7 things, but then when we get down the line, it's like, okay, well, right now clients only want 3. So so let's focus in there. I think just seeing kind of what can happen when I do make decisions, for the positive or negative. So I think I've been that way for a very long time, even before I started my business of okay, working in nonprofits, there's so many opportunities out there,
Mhm.
especially, partnerships or writing grants or just activities or programs that you can have for the people in your community, and thinking about, starting a new program or expanding a program. And there's so many decisions that we make on a daily basis. I think I have that little bit of anxiety of, okay, well, I've made this decision, but what if? So it's always that what if that kind of stops me. And it's funny that you said grace because that I selected a word for 2025 and that was the word for myself.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Well, good. You
yeah,
should use
yeah,
that.
in both personal and professional, the word is like to give myself grace and to also give others more grace.
Mhm.
I think that's something that's missing in relationships that we have on different levels of saying, oh, well, I would have done it this way. So, being more in judgment of the decisions that are made. And it's just
Mhm.
giving each other grace, knowing that this is all of our first time around the sun. Okay. Like we're all as young as we'll ever be again and as old as we are right in this moment. So just giving each other grace because we don't know what's going to happen. So
Mhm.
that's the word that I picked for 2025, and to
Mhm.
have that framework in my mind.
Nice. Well, how fortuitous. There we go.
Yeah.
Um, so some of the analysis paralysis,
Mm,
comes into play. So do you have an analytical background? Like what's your do you have an undergrad degree or graduate degree? Like I'm sensing some analysis
yeah.
uh
So I
tendencies
laugh
here.
because I did not have the typical, well, I don't know if there is a typical path into nonprofits, but My bachelor's and master's degree is actually in health services administration. So
Oh, okay.
yeah, so I couldn't decide in high school exactly what I wanted to do. I tell the story that I actually was going to go into accounting because I am very analytical,
Okay. That's the
numbers based.
analysis. Yep.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
I was thinking about business and I took an advanced accounting class in high school and we had the whole semester I was doing great. We had this company and we were learning, about debits and credits and income statements, balance sheets. Everything was fine until the final project. And they gave us this box and there were all of these documents for our mock company and we had to do the audit. And I thought it was going to be perfectly fine. I was working through it. I get to the end and it didn't balance. And I
Mm.
had to like go back, do all the tricks. Did I invert something? Did I miss something? And I just remember distinctly, and this was over 20 years ago, being in the living room crying with all of these papers all around me. And my mom comes in the living room and she's like, "What's wrong?" And I said, "Mom, I can't make it balance. If this was real life, I would go to jail." I said, I've ruined the statements. And she said, "Sweetheart, just take a deep breath and go to sleep and you can look at it in the morning." Needless to say, I turned in my project. I still couldn't make it balance. And even my teacher, back to Grace, my teacher said, sometimes you can't quite figure it out. I still passed the class, but I didn't go, and needless to say, I didn't go into accounting.
Yeah.
And so it was my mother who recommended, I was also a science nerd, so chemistry, biology. She saw the University of Evansville had a program for bachelor's and master's for health services administration. So I looked into it, so that my degrees are in health services administration, but I interned at the March of Dimes.
Okay.
And that's where I learned about, nonprofits. What drew me to March of Dimes, their research and their focus on fetal and maternal health. And then I
Mhm.
learned more about, the fundraising aspect so that there were funds, for the science, got out into the community, and that's how I started in nonprofit. And that really gave me more of that community focus and to understand what philanthropy really is and
Mhm.
what it means to give back to the community and to volunteer and to go out and talk about your mission and kind of connect your mission with what a donor would actually like to have an impact in. So that I do credit, that experience interning with the March of Dimes as opening that door for me, and went on to work for the March of Dimes and a few other nonprofit organizations such as the United Way. So that really opened the doors. But yeah, my background is more analytical. It's less of the warm and fuzzies, but I found a way to combine the two.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. How I got to where I am is similar. Had some accounting classes and was like, I'm good. Don't want to do that for a career path. But it's a good foundation
Mhm.
so that when you do go in and help these nonprofits, you can look at the books and go, okay, we might need to judge this a little bit.
Mhm.
Um, I'm curious to learn why and what the transition was to become a consultant. Like, going from the W-2 to the 1099, I help households with that all the time. So what did that look like for you? Like, what was that inspiration?
So I always knew that well, I shouldn't say always, but I knew for a long time that I wanted to go into consulting at some point in my career. I thought it would be much further down the line. I'd worked with consultants when I was an employee in nonprofits. I didn't quite know what that meant. And so, interacting with them, going out for coffee, talking, I'm like, oh, okay, you're taking all of this knowledge and expertise that you've gained, and then you're able to go out and instead of being employed at one company, you can consult with multiple different companies around the same area you have expertise in. So I thought, oh, okay, when I get ready to retire or around retirement age, I'll consult and I'll travel, but still be able to work. And my timeline was sped up in 2020. So my son was born in January of 2020, right before COVID. So I ended my maternity leave, went back to work for 1 week, and then COVID shut the world down.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was back one full week, Monday to Friday, and that weekend it was like everything shut down. So I was working from home. I was very, very blessed. My parents at the time, they lived like 10 minutes away from us. So we had a little bubble, and my son would go during the week, stay with grandma and grandpa during the day. I go pick him up in the evening. So I was able to work and started thinking like, okay, working from home is not that bad. I have, as long as I have internet connection, people were starting to realize like, hey, we can get work done without having people in a physical office, and they're
Mhm.
still connected. You still have phones, you have emails, you have Messenger. So I started to think about it a little bit more, and I sped up the timeline in December of 2020. I stepped back from my position because at the time, I had the decision to make. I became the interim executive director for a
Oh,
museum. So it was either I was going to become the director and with a small, infant at home, or I was going to kind of bet on myself, speed up the timeline a bit, and start my business. And I decided to start the business. And it's been 4 years now. Yep. It's December. It's been four
yeah.
years. And I want to say the first 2 years, I really, did word of mouth, reached out to friends, let them know what I was doing, asked if their organization or an organization they were connected to needed assistance. And then it was really last year when my son started daycare that I said, okay, I'm going to start networking more, get to know people, get out there. And I feel like now I'm sort of getting into a groove of being a business owner. I'm actually acknowledging and seeing areas of where I need to work as a CEO rather than so deep into the everyday that I'm not looking at the overall picture and putting
Mhm.
those plans together, looking at the different services I provide, looking at ways that, I can set things up so I can step back and still bring in that revenue. But it was very difficult in the beginning because, as you know, there's not a paycheck every 2 weeks. There's not health insurance. You
Nope.
pay for your own health insurance. And, thinking of those things and seeing, invoices that go out, whether it's, 30 days, 60 day that you're waiting for them to come in. I had to really hone in on, okay, financial forecasting and what does my
Mhm.
cash flow look like, and managing my calendar differently. At the beginning it was just like, oh, okay, business, bringing in business, new clients, and now I'm looking like, okay, let's look at the calendar. How much time do I need to time block to allocate? I also need to make sure that I'm getting out there networking and I'm not just, at my desk typing away and no one knows that I'm here, finding that balance between going from 8 to 5 and now I make my own calendar. So it's like I can't step away and go to this luncheon. I can step away and have coffee with someone. I can go to the grocery store in the middle of the day if I need to, something along those lines. So I want to say in the past year, it's when it's really become more of, okay, let's take this away from I'm the only person doing anything for the business to now I've brought on an assistant, and
Aw.
yeah, virtual assistant, and she's wonderful because she's getting me to actually take things off of my plate. And at our weekly meetings, she tells me, she's like, I can do that for you. I can, I can schedule
Good.
that. Yeah, it's just like, I can, organize this and put a framework together and then we can discuss it. And also looking at systems, just coming from an organization and starting my own business, frameworks were already in place for me.
Mhm.
And so starting a business, it was, well, I need to put together those frameworks for myself. And also I can look at best practices, but
Yeah.
what works well for me
Yep.
and the way that I work, and making those adjustments so that I'm not reactionary, that I can plan out what I want to do, how I want to do it, and I have a system. And bringing on someone as an assistant has really opened my eyes to that because she highlights to me, she's like, without these systems, every time you're sick, something comes to a halt. When your son
Mm,
is sick, things come to a halt. She's like, we put systems in place. And she's like, and you have me so that we can still keep the ball rolling and it
mhm.
doesn't all end at my desk.
Yes, which and for clients, that's really important.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, basically replacing yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's through software or I mean, we can't be fully replaceable.
Right.
Ish. You could sell the business at some point in the future, but um having softwares or systems in place or like the next tier of response
Mm-hmm.
level. Okay, if this person's not available, this is who picks up that call or responds to that email.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. Um, Want to go back to you gave me way too many nuggets. Um, Networking. What has been successful for you and what have you learned? Um, like how did you navigate where to dedicate your time? Like what was profitable and what was not?
For me personally, even though I, get out in the community, volunteer, and I've done all that for so long, during COVID, staying home for so long, I don't want to say it changed my personality, but interacting with people, it made it a bit more difficult for me to interact. I felt more awkward around new people and introducing myself. So getting back out there networking was very much like I walk into a room, I find my seat, and then I would sit down and I'm like, Jaleesa, you got to get up, say hello, you know. Oh, those are nice shoes. Oh, where'd you get this? Oh, just little things that I'd done for so long just boop, went completely out
Mhm.
of my head. So now what I do is less is more. And I say to myself, okay, if I'm going to spend a certain amount of time, is it going to be each week or each month, making sure that I'm getting out there and that people know I exist and they know what I do? And am I going to do that, via organizations? Am I just going to find networking opportunities for business owners? So the first thing that I did, I just kind of Googled women business owners, Indianapolis, and I came across the National Association of Women Business Owners, the
Awesome.
Indianapolis chapter, NABO. And it has been a great opportunity for me to say, okay, I'm going to start with this one organization, go to some meetings, interact, network. It's been great to meet other women business owners that have varying levels of businesses of one employee to hundreds of employees in different sectors. And I've been able to ease into networking and then take that to, okay, well, I've met this person. They recommended this other group. So let me
Mhm.
go to their free luncheon. Then I'll reach out to people to have coffee or to have lunch. And for my calendar, I've just told myself, okay, I can only have lunches on Friday afternoons. Because what I've
Mhm.
found is if I have deadlines during the week or I'm working on a grant and I go and have lunch with someone, I can't fully focus on what we're saying because I'm kind of like looking at my watch, knowing I have like 3 more hours of work to do on this grant, or oh, I have a meeting in about an hour. So, and I don't want to rush and you're really building relationships. So I schedule out if I have lunch with someone, it's going to be a Friday afternoon.
Nice.
And if I have coffee with someone, I try to only do that on, I think it's like Wednesdays or Thursdays. Like I've scheduled out like days that I'm actually going to network one-on-one with someone, but I
Mhm.
leave enough flexibility so that if I see something on social media or on LinkedIn, well, LinkedIn is social media. I don't know why I feel like it's separate. That it's
It's
so
got a business filter to it.
yeah. So I will see different, opportunities to network and get out there. And I try not to fill up my calendar because at one point I did that. I was just
Mhm.
like, anything that's available, I'm going to register and put it on my calendar because I really need to get out there. But I found that if I went to too many events and met too many people, then I wasn't following up
Yep.
regularly, or
Yep.
I was only remembering like little snippets about the person. So when we got back together for coffee or lunch, I didn't have anything to talk about because I didn't quite remember. I didn't quite
Who are
remember
you
them.
again?
Yeah, like, oh yeah, we went to that event. Oh, great. So what do we talk about? So I've done the less is more approach and let things happen a little bit more organically.
Mhm.
And I've gotten to know many different people from different industries and, gain some more knowledge on my business and things that I can incorporate to help, and also kind of, pitfalls that you don't want to fall into when starting a business. So that's been beneficial for me. But I have some other friends who, they look at their calendar and they say, okay, once a week I need to get out there. Or depending on their industry, they're like, every day I need to call at least 5 people or
Mhm.
something along those lines. I've really shied away from like cold call or cold messaging. It makes me nervous. I know that there's nothing wrong
Nobody
with it.
likes it.
I
It's not
mean,
fun.
you reached out via LinkedIn, and it's perfectly fine. But
Yeah.
I always feel bad if I don't know someone and I message them like, am I bothering them?
Mhm.
Am I going to seem, a little pushy or awkward? But I found that that's how you get to know people.
Mhm.
It's you're not born knowing, everyone within a 60-mile radius. So take the awkwardness out of messaging people. So
Yeah.
sometimes I'll just take a little block of time at the end of the day and do it and then log off so that I can't think about it. I don't think about it. If I did it at 10 a.m., I would think about it for the rest of the day. So I just say, okay, end of day, send these messages, and then we log out.
Very cute. Yeah, no, I had some people respond and say, "Oh, you're an actual person. You're not a bot." I'm like, "Yeah, no, I'm a real person."
Because
But I mean,
honestly,
yes,
that was
it
my first thought when you messaged me. I was like, is she real? So I looked at your profile and I said, okay. And I messaged back. But yeah, I think there's always a little bit of skepticism as
Mhm.
well, over the internet. If you're not meeting someone in person, it's like, what are their ulterior motives? And
Yep.
it's, even though we're on a site, like LinkedIn, on a site to meet people and to connect, they're still a little bit weary.
Yeah. No, I think generationally though, depending on how you were raised and how much internet you were exposed to and when you were exposed to it,
Mhm.
um yeah, I saw something the other day. It's like, oh my gosh, yes, we used to like be in chat rooms when there was no video. It was
Yeah.
just a screen name,
Mhm, mhm.
and it could be completely different from. So there's a certain age range where we probably have some crazy PTSD from. Like we might have some serious trust issues, but and even like folks that are even older than us,
Mhm.
eyeball to eyeball. There's no such thing as I'm networking online. The concept just doesn't click.
Mhm.
It has to be the true organic in person. My friend,
Yeah.
Sally referred me to you, so therefore,
Mhm.
then I will meet you.
Right.
Versus the next generation of workers, it's all online. So they're
Mhm.
like, yeah, sure, why not? I don't have to ever meet you in person. It's okay. So
Right.
it's
People have
entertaining to
friends
see
that they've been
how.
friends with for years and haven't met in person.
Yeah, I still have clients. Even if they're local,
Mhm.
still haven't met them in 3D. It's only been virtual. So very interesting. Um, but yeah, cold calling is not fun. Like an actual cold call
Mhm.
or the walking by a business and walking in, that's probably the most awkward. Or
Mhm.
door knocking. Bless all of the people that do door knocking. Like I just, I can send a message.
Uh-huh.
I can be ignored via social media. That's fine. It doesn't hurt my feelings.
Yeah, I did door knocking once while volunteering. And I just had to take in my head, I was like, all right, you're just going to be a different person for these next 3 hours. And let's go.
Yeah.
Because if it was me, I couldn't do it. I have wonderful neighbors. I don't even like knocking on their doors. I've taped thank you cards to their doors. And I'm like, when they get it, they get it.
Oh, I'll bug my neighbors. I have no problem with that. But, I've lived here long enough that I have no problem with that. Okay, want to go back to your calendar because it
Mhm.
sounds like you've got a set like calendar blocking time. So what does your typical week look like? Because I know that is probably one of the most challenging things
Yeah.
as a new business owner. You're like, the list is so long. How do I even know what is priority when it's all on fire? Like it all has to be
Yeah.
addressed. So how did you decipher what to do when throughout the week?
It was a lot of trial and error. And I'm also slowly working to being less paper oriented.
Mm-hmm.
Coming from writing grants, I'm killing trees. I'm printing out the instructions. I'm making my check boxes. I like to read with paper. If I can print it out, I'm going to print it out. And I'm trying to stay more online. So I always had a physical calendar as well as the calendar online. And I told myself, I was like, you're just duplicating work, writing it down and then having it in the calendar online, because I used my Google Calendar as kind of like an electronic reminder or an alarm to look
Mm-hmm.
and say, oh, okay, I have meetings, remind me 30 minutes beforehand or an hour beforehand so I can drive to the location. And I started telling myself, I was like, okay, you're just bouncing all over the place. And I never felt like I was truly getting anything done other than the grants or having meetings with clients and working through different projects. I just felt like on the business side I wasn't getting anything done for the business because I always pushed it aside. And I did a bit of a time audit to see what I was spending the most time on and what return was I getting and what was I spending, the medium and the least amount of time. And it really opened my eyes. I was like, oh, I'm spending like a lot of time reading in detail through all of my emails. And some of them I could just go, but read, delete. No, thank you. Oh, sure, let's schedule on this time. And I found, especially with scheduling meetings or scheduling, and I'm still working through it, but going back and forth, like, oh, what time is best for you? Oh, what place would be best for you? Oh, and I came across a few people who were transitioning from being employees to owning their own businesses, or business owners who had really great calendar management. And they recommended, especially for the business side, of certain days you do certain types of tasks
Mm-hmm.
and then time blocking the rest of the week out. And I just found that Mondays work the best for me to do administrative tasks. So I have my meeting with my assistant on Monday. I still do, I haven't relinquished like my QuickBooks and that sort of thing yet, but I'll review through QuickBooks quickly and see, okay, what invoices are out? Do I need to send reminders? What transactions haven't been logged? Do I need to log my mileage? Just kind of look through, the income that's coming in, forecasting, just to set my mind for the week that everything's okay. And
Mm-hmm.
then I try to get onto like social media on Mondays, respond to messages, kind of look and see what everyone's doing, respond to anything on LinkedIn, tell myself that I'm going to post. I'm really have that as a goal for the rest of the year for 2025, to put a consistent calendar together for social media, because it is important for people to know you exist and you're out there. But and I do some of my like larger planning on Mondays as well. So thinking about the quarters and the years, thinking about any projects that I want to bring on. I try to do that on Monday because it eases me into the week a bit. And I still do some work, but I won't put an actual time block of, okay, from 1 to 2, I need to work on this grant. From 2 to 3, I need to do this. During the week, I'm still playing with it a bit, but I've put blocks of, okay, you'll work from 8 a.m. till 12, and then I have to take a break for lunch. And then, 1 to 4, I'll work. I still haven't gotten to the point yet. I've seen some calendars where I have an associate who's an attorney, and she has a beautiful calendar where it's like Mondays are client days, so she's going to have client meetings. Tuesdays, she is going to have meetings with departments, and these are departments, and they have weekly meetings. Wednesday, like it's beautiful. And every time I try to do that, something always seems to come up. Like I get an email from someone that needs a document, or can we schedule this meeting, or can we move this around? So I'm getting better at time blocking, but I say about 60% of the way there, where I understand the concept. I'm trying very hard, but I still kind of push back against it a little bit. Yeah.
Mhm. I mean, obviously, when a client needs something and their hair is on fire,
Right.
that trumps all the other things. That's that grace that you got to
Right.
give yourself. It's like it's okay. If this can wait, cool. But if not, okay, let's just nip it in the bud and get it done. So
Mhm.
yeah, and I think every business is different because I've had several households that we've tried to implement something similar.
Mhm.
And we do something similar too, that each day of the week is dedicated towards something.
Mhm.
um but even networking stuff, we don't control when events are scheduled, so we
Mhm.
I go when it's scheduled.
Right.
But Friday, same thing. For your lunches, I can
Mhm.
hardly ever do lunches. That just totally screws up my day. And then it's like, oh, got to get my brain back into
Mhm.
what was I working on? So, yeah. Coffees I'll do all the time.
Yeah, I'll do a
But
coffee almost any day of the week, but that lunch, it really messes me up if I don't do it on Friday, because I'm like, I know I'm gonna go to that lunch and it'll be either at 11:30 or 12, and I'll just block it until 2. But if it's the first time you're really having a conversation with someone and we're not looking, I've had lunch that was like we looked up and it was 3:30, and I'm like, oh my goodness, because we were just going and talking, and neither one of us had a watch, and I didn't schedule any meetings after. So I know that if I have a lunch, I'm not necessarily I'll still go back to the office, but I'm not going to do any deep work. I'm not going to start doing any grant writing, working on any projects. It
yeah,
might be like, okay, let me check my emails, to finish anything out for the week. I might need to plan something out or schedule or put something on my calendar, but I'm not going to do any heavy lifting after a lunch on a Friday. I'm just
yeah,
gonna do it.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Going back to calendar stuff, and I know um my I normally have done Calendly for some of my
Mm-hmm.
my client appointments and stuff, but
Mm-hmm.
for this, it was more of a back and forth. But
Yeah.
Calendly is fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Have you heard of that one?
Yeah. And I've
Okay.
used that. Again, I have to tell myself that technology is fine. I've used Calendly for like discovery meetings with potential clients. Like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I'm only going to have discovery meetings, 2 days out of the week during this time block. But
Mm-hmm.
it's hard for me because I continuously have in my head, like, I want to be available when that person is available, and reminding myself that it's okay to say, like, no. It's okay to put parameters around when I'm going to meet. It's
Mm-hmm.
okay to not move my schedule around
Mm-hmm.
to accommodate a potential client, because in my mind, I'm thinking, well, this is someone who, could potentially use my services. I want to make sure that I can have a conversation with them. I don't want them to have to move their calendar around. And I just have to remind myself, like, hey, this is your calendar. This is what has worked best for you. If you can't meet for 2 weeks, that's okay. Like, you don't have to move things around or repurpose or reschedule when you're going to do some work so that you can meet with someone. If I
Yeah.
only want to meet with potential clients on a Wednesday from 10 to 2, and that's the time block, and that's just the time block.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And if they're it's also a great way to vet if you want to actually work with that person. So
Mhm.
if they're going to be very complicated to work with, it's like, this might be an indicator that we're not a good fit."
Yeah. And I've had that before too, with moving, meetings around, or being able to tell, as well, how aware someone is of time.
Mhm.
where, the meeting is supposed to start at 1 and it's routinely 1:10, 1:15, and they're messaging you like, oh, I had something run long, or oh, I forgot, are you still available? Or oh yeah, there are different indicators of like, oh, this could be problematic.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
But
Yeah.
yeah, and one thing with the time blocking that I'm getting better with is and doing that time audit of having a general idea because each grant is different, but sitting down and noting to myself, okay, how long does it generally take me to do a federal grant? How
Yeah.
long does it generally take me to do a regional or a state grant or a local grant? And then giving that to my assistant and updating it so that when I send to her like information of, oh, have this client, it's this grant, it's a federal grant, go ahead and do the time blocking, she'll know it's going to be 40 hours at a minimum. So she'll block in hour and a half or 2 hour blocks for me to work on those grants because I work better when I don't just sit down all day and do one thing. So she'll go ahead and put the time blocks in, and that's worked very well because before it just felt that if I couldn't get a section done in one day, then like I've wasted the day and the to-do list is ongoing. And
Mhm.
doing the time blocks, it's like, no, I worked for 2 hours. I know I have another 2 months of work to do. Yeah, it's okay that I didn't finish this section today. Tomorrow, I'll have another time block to do it. And then, in 2 more days, I'll have a time block. So that really helped me in knowing how long it's going to take me to do something because I underestimated and overestimated at times. Like, oh, this will take me 15 minutes. It took 2 hours. Or, oh, this will take all day. It took 30 minutes.
Hmm. That's interesting. No, I love the using audits,
Mhm.
but for time. Yeah. That's that accounting again. But just a different aspect. No, that's fantastic. I think that could be implemented for several people, especially in the service industries.
Mhm.
It's understanding how long it actually takes you to do the different levels of services. So that's really good that and as you continue to have more processes
Mhm.
implemented, maybe another staff person, all of that gets to be updated and continue to audit to make sure you're processing
And that
efficiently.
actually came from me being an employee. I had a director who knew that the organization was going to have more opportunities and was going to continue to grow. And he was kind of looking at all of our job descriptions and if we were going to need like additional trainings in certain areas. And he really sat down with the leadership staff and he asked us all, he said, do you know where you're spending your time? Because he looked internally and said, I feel like I'm spending too much time doing the things I really like to do and not enough time doing the things that I don't necessarily like to do, but they need to be done. And he had us do time audits. He had us do them for far too long. It should have been like, okay, we'll do this for a week or a month. And he just implemented like every week you're going to do this, and it was way too detailed. But his heart was in the right place. The way that we did it was a bit cumbersome. But I thought back to that when I was thinking to myself, even in the beginning of how will I price, what my services are,
Mhm.
not thinking about it the way an employee would of, oh, I'm getting paid a certain amount per hour. It's okay, the expertise that I'm bringing, the skill set that I'm bringing versus the hour, but then knowing, okay, what's my capacity? I
Right.
don't want to bring on too many projects, too many clients, and then I don't have the time to do it and also thinking like, oh, I don't have the time to bring on anyone else. It's like, oh, well, actually, yes, you do if you knew where you spent your time. Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm. No, I think that's great. So I mean, explain to me what a time audit looks like. Like how do you do it?
So again, going back to paper, I use paper in my calendar. So I'll take a week or two and I'll look at my calendar and I'll say, okay, this has been time blocked out, and I'll follow my calendar and see like, oh, okay, I was scheduled to actually do some grant writing here, but a call came in. And so I'll see how many times like I needed to adjust, or I have 2 hours blocked to write. I really got in the swing of things and wanted to write a bit more, and I did. And then looking at the time of day, it's like, am I working better in the morning? Am I working better in the afternoon? How do I schedule that? And then I could also see my time wasters where I'll get really bogged down in emails, where I'll read through them and say, oh, well, I'll get to that later. Or, oh, this is important. Let me keep it unread. And so it looks like I have a lot of emails, but it's like reference pieces that I need to put in a folder or something that I could possibly do later. So implementing, if it's something that I can do in the next minute or two from an email, then I'm just going to go ahead and do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't check my email multiple times during the day. I check in the morning, around lunchtime, and then an hour or so before I sign off for the day.
Nice.
Because if I check it during the day, every time something pops up, I get very distracted and then I don't stick to my time. But yeah, I'll try and stick pretty close to what my calendar says for a week. And then midway and at the end of the week, I'll look and see, I was like, okay, did this really work for me? You know, having grant writing in the morning on this day, then going to an event, then having meetings, you know, or a day where I just had back-to-back meetings, like did that work well for me? And how much time do I need between each meeting? So that's kind of how I do that calendar audit of, okay, let's really see if this is working. And then when I was doing it on paper, before I started time blocking on the calendar, I had a insert in my agenda that listed, you know, 8 a.m. to 5 a.m. in 1 hour blocks. And I would write in what I wanted to do for that day and to
Mm-hmm.
see if I accomplished it or if I needed to add more time or add less time to it. So those were the two ways that I did the time audits. And I won't say that I felt a little guilty sometimes because I'm like, oh, that didn't get done. Let's push that to the next day. Or, you know, I spent 30 minutes on it when I'd allocated an hour because something came up. So again, it's that grace, showing myself grace, but seeing what works well most of the time,
Yeah.
knowing that it's not going to be perfect every day or every week, but what worked best most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not having your email open all the time. That's a squirrel.
Yeah. I had a client, I had to tell him because he had an Apple Watch, he had his work email on his phone, and he also had the notifications on. And
Oh no.
I would be in his office, you know, talking to him, and we're talking about an event and what's going into it and sponsorship and et cetera. And he's getting the bing, bing, bing notifications. And he's got 20 tabs open on his laptop as well. And he's like picking nervously at his fingers. And I said, you have to stop. You're too connected. You have your watch is dinging, your computer notifications are dinging, your phone is buzzing, and you're getting very anxious, and you have phone calls coming in.
Mm-hmm.
So for myself personally, I turn off the volume on my laptop so that if anything pings up a new email or anything of that sort, I won't hear it, or I just close out the tab from my email so I don't even have it up.
Mm-hmm.
I have some clients where, because of the work that I do for them, I manage their grant portfolio. I'll have an email address attached to their organization, and
Mm-hmm.
I will just sign out and not have Teams on because I don't want to hear bing, bing, or
Yep.
some clients, you know, within their organization, they're very big on communication. So everyone's CC'd to emails. And like, I don't need that email. I don't need to hear the emails coming in. So I'm very big on don't even have the tab open unless it's, you know, that allotted time when you're actually checking them. So you don't
Mm-hmm.
have the background noise and turning off notifications. I have my phone on vibrate because I
Yeah.
do have a 4-year-old. So I'm always nervous, you know, something will happen at daycare or my parents are trying to get a hold of me because something is going on there. So I have
Mm-hmm.
it on vibrate, but I don't keep my phone very close to me when I'm working. I'll have it on the opposite corner of my desk or in the other corner of the room so I can
Nice.
hear the buzz,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't see a lot of things, and going into my phone on my apps and turning off notifications so that I don't see that someone's, you know, messaged me on LinkedIn or a friend has, sent me something on Facebook or anything, I'm very big on being disconnected but only on if in case of emergency.
Right. Yeah. No, I was at a conference a few years ago. They did a study that was AI and technology oriented for this presentation.
Mhm.
They gave two people the same task, and it was like a questionnaire of sorts.
Mhm.
One had their cell phone on the table, not face up, face down,
Mhm.
and the other person, it was in the other room.
Mhm.
Which person did the task more efficiently and had all of the questions correct?
Mhm.
The one without the cell phone.
Right. Right.
So it's like going back to just having a landline. Just it, yeah.
Right. Mhm.
We'll call them when we call them.
Yeah.
Not having notifications on, and some people think I'm very similar in that I don't have notifications turned on for all of the things on my phone. Lord help me. No, I would never get anything done. Um, yeah, it's so I might try to implement the email thing. That might be probably my challenge.
Yeah. And that's the challenge for most people. It's the emails.
Yeah.
And,
It's a time suck to get through all
I
of
have
it.
one client where they had a conversation with me because they felt that I was not responding to emails quickly enough. And it was literally, they'd sent me an email at 12:30 and at 2 o'clock, they were texting me to let me know that they'd sent me an email and was asking me to respond. And I just had to let them know it's like, I'm not always going to be at my desk. That's the difference between you having an employee and you having me as a consultant. Your calls and emails are very important to me, but you're not going to get the same turnaround speed that you would as an employee. And also, it's not an emergency. It's
Mhm.
important. And I had to learn that too. There's a difference between important and urgent.
Mm.
So I've implemented with clients, I may, depending on the load, the workload that I have with them, it may be like, okay, on Tuesdays, I'm going to devote to your organization from this time to this time. I check my emails daily, but you'll get a quicker turnaround from me. And also, you have my business number. If there's something that has come up last minute, feel free to text me like, hey, I sent an email, something came up urgent, no problem. But to expect that quick turnaround of the immediate, and I think for some clients, it's not necessarily the first time working with a consultant, but they still have the mindset of it would be better if I could get up from my desk, go down the hall, and you were right there. I
Yeah.
can ask you a
Yeah.
question. Yeah, and it's like even with your own employees, sometimes that's not the best thing to just
Mhm.
get up, go down the hall, and to be able to ask them a question or to get something, some bit of information for them or to, get a follow-up. So yeah, that's been the notifications. And then just I feel that because we're all so connected, we all expect immediate responses
Yeah.
and immediate connections and taking some of that urgency away by pre-planning so that we're not responding to the fires, that we have, you know, those processes in place, that we have a certain schedule, that we have that communication open so that there isn't that need to feel that, oh, immediately after, I send a text or an email or something along those lines. Yeah.
Yeah. It's okay. I mean, if I was working on your project, you would want me to not be distracted by 20
Right.
other things. You would want me dedicated to that. So,
Right.
gonna give the same, you know, time to all of my clients. Yes. No, yes. And communicating that professionally so that it's
Mhm.
not, no, I'm just not available for 4 hours out of the day. No, it's,
Right.
I'm working. I'm working
Yeah.
on all of the services we provide.
Right. It's like I'm
That's
working or I'm away from my computer, or I'm at another meeting, or, I'm driving, that sort of thing. I think there is kind of a mindset of oh, okay, if I'm at my computer, everyone's at their computer.
Mm-hmm.
Or
Mm-hmm.
if I have my phone right here, everyone has their phone right here. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Um, well, one last question for you. A piece of advice that you've either received or that you would give your previous self, like as you're getting started. What was like your big, I wish I had known that, or it was like a turning point piece of advice as you've grown the business? That was a multiple question.
Very fun.
Pick one.
I'll combine. So it's something that I often tell my clients because working in the nonprofit space, I believe in the beginning of philanthropy, people had this idea that, oh, people who worked in philanthropy were do-gooders. Like they just wanted to do good. They had these big hearts and they wanted to get out there and solve the problems in their communities. And while that is true, it's getting away from the mindset of, well, I want to do so much good, so I have to do everything. If you need this, if you need that, if this needs to be done. And so I would constantly tell clients, you can't be all things to all people. So
Mhm.
that's why, the tagline that I have for my business is mission focused and mission focused results. It always comes back to the mission. And anyone that works in philanthropy has said it, has read it, heard it over and over again. It always comes back to the mission. And I would tell clients that, if you're thinking about a program or a partnership, anything, what's your mission? Why was your organization created? And what do you do for your community and why? And I've had to turn the mirror around and say, well, Jalessa, you can't be all things to all people. So when I first started, I had issues, and it's something that I fight with now with myself of, okay, what services am I going to provide? What am I going to do? And even though I've narrowed it down and like have a beautiful website and it says, grant writing and fund development and capacity building, if I meet someone and they're like, oh, I'm thinking about starting a nonprofit and can we, meet, et cetera, et cetera. Sure. Even though I have on there and I tell people I work with established nonprofits because it just takes so much to start a nonprofit, everything that's involved in it. And that's not my area of expertise, but I have experience and I know how to do it. So when I started my business, it was like anything I had experience in or knew how to do, I would do it. And it took a while for me to say, okay, yes, you can do this, but is that what you want to do? There's nothing wrong with being a business owner and saying, okay, I'm going to focus my business on things that I have the expertise and the experience in, but that I also love to do. And I love grant writing. I love consulting with organizations to see from top to bottom what they're doing and what they can do better. I love training and public speaking. These are things that I love to do. I don't necessarily love helping people start nonprofits. I don't necessarily love going in and looking at a program from, A to Z and, helping people get programs started and expanding. Those aren't things that I love to do. So I was doing them in the beginning because, again, it's like I'm building a business. I should be there for people. I want to be of service. But it's like you can't be all things to all people. And when you find really what you love to do and what you have the skill set in doing, and then you do that a lot, then the day is a lot brighter. I don't believe in the whole, oh, if you love what you do, it'll never feel like work. It always feels
No,
like
it's
work.
work.
It always feels like work. But I don't have those days anymore where I wake up and I'm like, oh, okay, let's get to it. I'm like, okay, what do we have on the agenda for today? What are we going to do today? Because I'm doing the things that I love. So that's something that I would tell myself in the beginning. Like, it's okay to sit down and say, this is what I love doing. This is what I do very well. Let me narrow it down. And there's nothing wrong with doing one or two things, with just having a niche and not looking at it as, oh, that's business that I'm not, bringing in. Oh, that's a potential client that I'm turning away. It's like, well, no, you're also saying, I want to wake up every day and do what I love and be the best at doing that and grow a business in just that lane. So, yeah, you can't be all things to all people.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, besides Grace, like, is there anything else or mission focused? I said that was the last question, but it's not.
You're
You
fine.
inspired me for another one. Um, that you're doing in 2025 that we need to be aware about. So if somebody's listening, they want to find you. What's a special project you're working on in
So I have
2025?
two areas that I'm going to focus on because I just kept saying, okay, I'm going to work on this. Okay, I'm going to work on this. And it's been a few years, but I'm getting back into public speaking. At one point, I was heavily focused in public speaking as an employee in the community, but then also as a Toastmaster. I was a Toastmaster for several years. And before I had my son, and before they changed the education track, I was on track to be a distinguished Toastmaster.
Okay.
And it was right towards the end of my pregnancy. And then they also changed requirements. So it just didn't work out with an infant. But I enjoy going out and public speaking and speaking and trainings, doing trainings, on philanthropy and fundraising and grant writing and getting back into that. That's been in the back of my mind as I'm getting the business settled and getting systems in place and working with clients. But for me, it's a way to like expand the reach that I have. Rather than working one-on-one, I can work with a group of 20 or 100 or hundreds, depending on the venue. And then also along the lines of training, finally sitting down and putting together online trainings because I've interacted with so many people, whether they're moved from for-profit to nonprofit, or they're volunteers, or they're new on a board, and they want to understand grants, or they want to understand, okay, well, they say, outcomes. What are outcomes? What are the grant requirements? How would one find a grant? Write a grant. And also on the lines of, philanthropy, so many people don't like to ask, to make the ask, and they feel like, oh, they're begging. And it's like, no, you're connecting your mission and your organization and what you're doing with the person who has the resources and they want to help and they have an area that they really have a passion for, and you're just connecting the two. And I think the past few years, especially with COVID, people have become more comfortable being online and online learning. Those are the two areas that I told myself, I'm really going to focus in on getting this curriculum done so that I can have online workshops and trainings around grant writing and philanthropy, and then getting out there and actually public speaking again.
Awesome. Yay. Well, that sounds exciting. Busy year ahead for you.
Yeah, I've got a lot of planning to do, but I'm excited for it. It's been, a few years that I've been saying, oh, okay, I should do it. Oh, what if? Oh, I know it's needed because I interact with so many people that say, oh, once you get that going, yeah, let me know. And I just keep pushing it like further back and further back, putting out fires, for
Mm-hmm.
clients. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
we're going to take some time and focus on this.
Yeah. Well, that's going back to where we started today.
Mhm.
It's making the decision to actually just do it.
Right. Those three
Why not?
words, like you did
Just
it very
try.
well. Just do it.
Yeah. Awesome. 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 Well, thank you so much for chatting with me today. Hope you all tune in to our next episode, and we'll see you all soon.
Thank you for having me.